It started on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the kind where everything seems ordinary until it absolutely isn't. Julia sat cross-legged on the floor of their home office, surrounded by manila folders and receipts, trying to make sense of their tax deductions. She wasn't looking for trouble. She was just being thorough, flipping through papers like she had every year. But then, she saw it. A folded lease agreement. Crisp, recent, official-looking. Her husband's name printed right at the top, but with an address she didn't recognize. Her breath caught. She unfolded the pages slowly, her hands trembling ever so slightly. It wasn't just the fact that it was a rental, it was that it was signed 6 months ago. 6 months. They had been living together the entire time, sharing coffee mugs, calendars, laundry days. And yet, this place, this lease, had existed right under her nose. She could feel the panic rising, that sharp kind of fear that knows it's about to become something else. Something colder. She didn't storm into the living room. She didn't scream or cry. Julia was too measured for that. Instead, she leaned in the doorway casually later that evening, holding their water bill like it was just any old errand. "Hey," she asked, voice light. "Do we need to update our address anywhere? I found some older stuff. Thought maybe you helped someone out or something?" Mark blinked, a little too long. Then came the lie. "Oh yeah, that's just something from work. Helped a coworker get approved. Nothing to worry about." She smiled, nodded, and quietly took a photo of the lease when he wasn't looking. It was just a regular Tuesday, the kind where your biggest concern is whether the receipts are in the right folder. I had the living room floor covered in tax documents, a cup of lukewarm tea by my side, and no reason to expect anything out of the ordinary. But then I found it. Folded neatly between 2 years of utility bills was a rental agreement. My husband's name, clear as day. But the address? I'd never seen it before. Not once. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he co-signed for someone. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But the date said otherwise. Signed 6 months ago, while we were still sleeping side by side, cooking dinner together, planning our next weekend getaway. I sat there frozen, my fingers gripping the paper like it might disappear. My stomach sank, and suddenly, every sound in the house felt louder, sharper, too real. That night I didn't say a word. Not about the lease, at least. Instead, I walked into the kitchen with a few bills in my hand and asked, all breezy, "Hey, do we need to update our address anywhere? Found some weird stuff in the files?" He barely looked up, said it was just some old paperwork, something he helped a coworker with. His tone was so casual, so confident, it almost made me question my own instincts. Almost. I waited until he went to bed, then took a photo of the lease, just in case. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed next to him, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, wondering how someone could look so peaceful while carrying a secret like that. My thoughts ran wild. Who lived there? Was it even occupied? Was it his? Or did he lend his name to someone? The lies he told me curled around my chest like smoke, tightening with every hour that passed. But I said nothing. Not yet. I needed more than a hunch. I needed the truth. By morning, I had a plan. I told him I had errands, a few things to drop off at the post office, nothing major. Meanwhile, I zoomed in on the address I'd captured on my phone and mapped the route. It wasn't in our neighborhood, not even close. It was in a newer, more polished part of town, the kind of area with boutique gyms, expensive cafes, and apartment buildings with names like The Aria or Luna Place. My hands shook on the steering wheel as I pulled up to the address, heart pounding like I was doing something wrong. But I wasn't. I was just uncovering. I didn't go in. I sat in my car across the street, watching. It looked so quiet, clean, empty. But the concierge out front was laughing with someone, a young woman in workout clothes, holding green juice and unlocking the front door with a keycard. She didn't look familiar, but something about her ease, her comfort, made my skin prickle. I took note of the time. I watched her go in, and I waited. Something told me this was only the beginning. Later that night, I made dinner like I always did, stirring the pasta, pouring his wine, pretending everything was normal. It's funny how your body goes on autopilot while your mind plays detective. Every glance, every word, every silence between us. I watched it all like I was outside myself. I studied him. He laughed at something on his phone, told me about his day, kissed me goodnight. And I smiled back, steady and sweet, with the image of that lease burning a hole in my memory. Over the next few days, I replayed that moment over and over. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But my gut never lied to me before, and it wasn't about to start now. So I started tucking questions into casual conversations, noting his expressions, his slips, the pauses between words. I wasn't angry yet, not on the surface. But something in me had shifted. Like a door had opened, and the cold air rushed in. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was watching him, closely. And the more I watched, the more I knew. That lease wasn't just paperwork. It was a breadcrumb. And I intended to follow it, every step of the way, until I found out exactly what kind of life my husband had been renting behind my back. The following week, I found myself parked outside that apartment more times than I care to admit. I wasn't proud of it. But curiosity, once ignited, doesn't just flicker out. It spreads. I sat there with sunglasses on, coffee in hand, trying to look like just another tired woman taking a break from errands. But inside, I was boiling. Because if there was something to uncover, I needed to see it with my own eyes. No more trusting words. Just proof. The first time I saw her again, it stung. She came out mid-morning, hair damp, keys jingling, heading straight to her car with a little bounce in her step. She couldn't have been more than 30. Bright-eyed, fit, pretty in that effortless way that comes with youth and no real responsibilities yet. I wanted to hate her, but part of me just felt old, tired. I caught myself wondering if Mark laughed with her like he used to with me, if he told her the same stupid stories, if he made her feel like she was the only one. I told myself I wouldn't jump to conclusions, but that resolve shattered 3 days later. I saw him. Mark. He was walking beside her, both of them carrying groceries. She bumped his shoulder playfully, and he leaned in to kiss her, soft, familiar, completely at ease. I watched from behind tinted glass as my marriage, my life, unraveled in the span of 6 seconds. I didn't cry. Not then. I felt something colder, like the part of me that loved him had quietly walked out and shut the door behind her. I drove home in silence that night. No music, no tears, just the dull hum of tires on asphalt and a mind that wouldn't stop spinning. I wish I could say I felt devastated, but that's not quite it. What I felt was betrayed, yes, but also insulted. Like he thought I'd never look beyond the surface, like I was too soft or too stupid to connect the dots. And that realization lit a fire inside me. Because I might have been heartbroken, but I wasn't helpless. When I walked through our front door, the scent of his cologne hit me. It clung to everything. The couch, the hallway, even the sweater I tossed over the chair last week. It felt like being haunted by a man who was still alive, but already living somewhere else. I looked around at our life, the framed photos, the shared routines, and wondered when exactly I became the decoy, the shadow wife, the background to someone else's real story. But I didn't confront him, not yet. I smiled. I asked how his day was. He told me traffic was awful. I nodded. Then I excused myself to take a bath, where I stared at the ceiling for an hour, water long gone cold. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to make a plan. One he'd never see coming. Over the next few days, I became someone else entirely. Quiet, watchful, intentional. I tracked his schedule without him noticing. When he left for work, when he came home, when he said he was working late but never brought his laptop back. I even followed him once. He didn't see me. He never does. That's the thing about men like Mark. They get so comfortable in their lies, they forget women like me are always 10 steps behind, until we decide to catch up. And the girl? She was always there, always waiting. She brought him takeout, wore his sweatshirts, smiled at him like he was hers to keep. I wondered what lies he fed her. Was I a crazy ex? A cold, absent wife? Did he tell her I didn't understand him? Men like him always spin a story. And women like her? They believe it, until they don't. But I wasn't going to warn her. Not yet. She wasn't my target. Not really. My eyes were on Mark, and every step he took, every kiss, every visit, every moment he thought was secret, I watched. I collected. I waited. And slowly, carefully, I began laying the first stones of what would become the foundation of his downfall. The first person I called wasn't a friend. It wasn't family. It was a lawyer. I booked the meeting under my maiden name and showed up early, clutching a folder like it held the weight of the world, because in a way, it did. I showed her the lease, explained what I'd seen, and then I asked the question that had been echoing in my head for days. What are my options? She was calm, direct. She told me the truth I already knew, but needed to hear from someone with a sharp suit and a sharper pen. I had a case. Financial infidelity. Deception. Grounds for something much more than heartbreak. That gave me fuel. I stopped reacting and started planning. I began siphoning money out of our joint account little by little into one of my own. Nothing dramatic, just enough that I could rebuild without him when the time came. I started saving screenshots too. Bank statements, location shares, text messages. I even began recording conversations, making sure every sweet lie he told me was preserved in crystal clarity. He still kissed me goodbye every morning. I smiled back, already a dozen moves ahead. Then I got bolder. I dressed down, threw on a cheap wig and oversized sunglasses, and walked into that same apartment building pretending to be someone else. Said I was a cousin, here to drop off something for Mark's fiancée. And just like that, the concierge opened up. Told me how sweet they were together. How Mark listed her as his emergency contact. How the staff joked that they'd probably be married by next spring. I smiled politely, biting the inside of my cheek so I wouldn't laugh or scream. Every lie he told me started to feel like a gift. Each one handed me another piece of the puzzle, another weapon I could use. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way people expect. I was focused, sharpened. It's funny how betrayal can hollow you out, and then, without warning, fill you with clarity. I stopped asking, why would he do this to me? And started asking, how far can I take this before he even notices? That shift changed everything. At night, I started writing things down in a journal he'd never find. Times, names, dates, phrases he repeated. I even noted how he smelled when he got home. If there was new cologne, different soap, faint perfume I didn't wear. I became a quiet collector of his unraveling. And through it all, he never suspected a thing. That was the most insulting part. He thought I'd never put it together, that I'd stay small, stay sweet, stay silent. But I had something he didn't: patience. He acted with impulse. I moved with precision. I knew exactly what I was building. And I knew it had to be public, unforgettable, and impossible to recover from. So I began designing the evening. one he'd never see coming, one that would look like love, right up until the very moment it didn't. I chose the date carefully. Not his birthday, not our anniversary. Too obvious. I picked a night in between, one that would feel random to him but symbolic to me. I booked the venue, one of those cozy chic places with candles on every table and a string quartet in the corner. I told him it was a surprise dinner, something to celebrate us. He smiled, kissed my forehead, said he felt guilty for forgetting whatever it was. I assured him it didn't matter. It would. I sent out the invitations with care. Friends, colleagues, even his parents. And of course, her, the fiancée. I messaged her from a new account, said I was a close friend of Mark's who had met her once at a networking mixer, told her we were throwing him a surprise celebration and it would mean so much if she came. She said yes, of course she did. That's what love does. It makes you show up without question. I counted on that. Every day leading up to the event, I rehearsed my part. What I'd wear, how I'd stand, the words I'd say. I wasn't preparing for a fight. I was preparing for closure. Not the quiet, private kind people whisper about. The kind you deliver with a microphone in one hand and receipts in the other. Because sometimes silence isn't strength. Sometimes justice needs a spotlight. The night arrived dressed in charm, twinkling lights, soft music, glasses clinking in gentle celebration. Everything looked perfect. I made sure of it. I wore the red dress he once said made me look dangerous in the best way. The maitre d' greeted guests by name. Mark beamed like the king of some invisible empire, thanking everyone, soaking in the love. He didn't know the ground beneath him was already cracking, that this night wasn't about celebrating him, it was about exposing him. She showed up right on time, the fiancée. She wore a delicate silver dress and a look of excited nervousness. She didn't know anyone, so I greeted her personally, hugged her, told her how glad I was she came. Her eyes lit up when I said I was a friend of Mark's. She leaned in to say how special he was, how lucky she felt. I smiled, nodded, offered her champagne. It was like watching someone step onto a stage they didn't know was on fire. The speeches began. His best friend toasted to many more years of love. His mother spoke about how Mark had always been so devoted. I bit the inside of my cheek so I wouldn't laugh. And then, when it was my turn, I stood. Calm. Poised. I thanked them all, every friend, every family member, every stranger who came in the name of something pure. And then I cleared my throat and said, "There's just one more thing I'd like to share before we end the night." I pulled out the small remote I'd tucked into my clutch and aimed it toward the screen behind me. The projector clicked to life. For a moment, the room stayed still, quiet, curious, warm with wine and laughter. And then the first image appeared. Mark, outside that unfamiliar apartment, unlocking the door. The date stamped clearly in the corner. Then another, him carrying groceries with her. Another, his lips on hers, mid-smile. Gasps echoed across the room like shattered glass. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Turns out," I said, steady and even, "Mark's been celebrating an entirely different kind of commitment these past few months. One that involved a second lease, a second life, and a second chance he was never going to give me." The silence in that room felt almost sacred. People shifted uncomfortably. His parents looked confused. His fiancée turned pale, blinking as if she might wake up from the dream any second. Then I walked over to the table where I'd neatly placed copies of the lease, highlighted, time-stamped, undeniable. "The good news?" I said, turning back to them. "The lease ends next month. And so does the marriage." No one moved. Mark's mouth opened, but no words came. I didn't wait for any. I turned to the stunned crowd and smiled with the kind of peace that only comes when you've already let someone go long before you say it out loud. I didn't stay for dessert. I didn't need to. The show was over. And unlike him, I knew when to leave with grace. I handed the mic back, picked up my bag, and walked straight past him, past the wide eyes and whispered shock and the fiancé who still hadn't sat down. I didn't look back. Because once you reclaim your power, there's nothing left to find in the wreckage. Especially not from someone who thought you'd never open your eyes. Outside, the air felt cooler than I remembered. Clean. I took a deep breath and let the silence wrap around me, not like emptiness, but like space. Room to breathe. Room to begin again. I didn't need revenge to scream. It didn't need to break things or burn bridges. Sometimes the most beautiful revenge is simply the truth, delivered with a smile and a door that closes without hesitation. And I knew, as I walked to my car, heels clicking softly on the pavement, that the next 24 hours would be chaos for him. His parents, the other woman, the friends who'd quietly judged me. Let them sort through the mess. I had other plans. Plans that didn't include picking up the pieces of a man who shattered everything on his own. The locksmith came first thing in the morning. No questions asked. Just quiet clicks and turns as he changed the locks on the home I once shared with a man who thought secrets were safer than honesty. I watched from the hallway, arms folded, as he handed me the new keys. It felt symbolic, in a way, like locking the past out, not just the man. That same afternoon, the divorce papers were delivered to Mark's office. I didn't need to see his face, I just needed the receipt of delivery. He called. 4 times, left voicemails filled with stammered explanations, regret-flavored excuses, and pathetic appeals. I didn't listen to most of them. The words barely mattered anymore. They always came too late, like an apology whispered through a slammed door. He even showed up once, knocking, pacing, begging to talk. But I didn't open it. Not because I was angry, because I was done. There's a difference. And as for her, the woman in the silver dress, she left him too. Turns out she didn't know either. Not really. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she packed up the day after the party, returned the ring, and never looked back. I didn't rejoice in that. But I did find a certain kind of peace in it. A quiet knowing that truth has a way of peeling back every layer, even the ones people try hardest to hide. In the weeks that followed, I cleaned house, literally and figuratively. I sold off the things that held no meaning anymore. The furniture we picked out together, the matching dinnerware, even the framed vacation photos I once adored. It all went. I took the money and invested it in something better. Me. Therapy sessions, a personal trainer, a cooking class I'd always talked about but never made time for. Every move felt like stitching a piece of myself back together, stronger, clearer, untouched by his shadow. I started waking up earlier, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I'd sip my coffee on the back porch, barefoot and free, listening to birds instead of lies. I stopped checking my phone for his messages, started listening to music I actually liked again. Funny how someone's presence can take up so much space in your life, and how quickly the air clears once they're gone. I was breathing fully for the first time in years. Then one day, I booked a trip, just for me. No itinerary, no matching luggage set, no fake smiles across a shared hotel bed. Just a one-way ticket to somewhere warm, where no one knew my name, and the only ring on my finger was the one I chose for myself. It wasn't about escaping, it was about reclaiming. Because there's something beautifully rebellious about taking joy where heartbreak once lived. A few months later, I happened to walk past that apartment building, the one with the concierge, the mirrored windows, the ghost of his second life. I paused for a second. Not out of sadness, not even anger, just reflection. It felt like a place from someone else's story now, someone I used to be. I smiled, not because I missed any of it, but because I didn't, not one bit. And that to me was the truest kind of freedom. He lost everything in silence. I didn't need to scream. I didn't burn bridges or slash tires or make scenes. I just stepped back and let the truth do what it does best, unravel the lies on its own time. And in the end, he stood there, alone, exposed, and exactly where he put himself. Meanwhile, I was already halfway into a new chapter, one I wrote without needing his name at the top of the page. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't break you, not if you don't let it. It teaches you. It strips away illusion. It introduces you to the version of yourself that knows exactly what she's worth and refuses to settle for anything less ever again.